And then let's see. All right, so you look good. Hey, everybody. It's the Monday edition of the TED Show, episode 44. I'm with my longtime friend, and we won't even talk about how long we've known each other. I can see people on. Mark Bender. And we want to give a shout out to his beautiful wife, Dee Dee.
Hello, Dee Dee.
Because Dee Dee's amazing, and she's the one that kind of reached out to me. I had thought about having Mark on anyway, but she's like, you need to have Mark come on and talk about some things. And I said, you're absolutely right. All right, so we have people on. Please tell me if you can hear us. Hey, Gina Lee Duncan's on. Let us know that you can hear us. Mark hasn't spoken yet. Say hi to them, Mark.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me on, Ted.
I am very happy. Oh, Marianne Kona O'Donnell is on. Happy Monday. All right, so you can hear us. That's good. Keep me in the loop. We're going to hope we don't turn sideways today. It's loud in the club today, so Mark and I are both going to hopefully not scream, but we will definitely talk as loud as possible. So Mark and I have known each other since our kids went to school together, right?
16, 17 years
16,
ago. 17
years. We were both little babies.
That's
little
right.
babies. And now our kids are all out of high school, in college, working on their lives, and Mark and I are still looking like we're in our 20s. Thanks, Tracy. Sounds good. Lots of good comments. Thank you, guys. So Mark is a local attorney, also a UCF grad, also a Greek. I'm a Sigma Chi, you're SAE, right?
Right.
Both went to UCF. Both there sort of around the same time. Were you there when it was FTU?
I was. I started in 77, 79. They changed it.
Okay, so he's much older than me.
Older,
I did not start when it was FTU. No offense, buddy. Did you go to homecoming this weekend?
I wasn't able to make it, but watched the game on TV. It was great to see them.
We
go
won.
5-0.
We have a couple of Florida teams that won. Y'all don't panic. I'm not having a brain aneurysm right now, but I understand that UCF's top 20, USF's bigger than that.
Yeah, they're 18.
So, our Florida schools that we love it's going pretty well.
Absolutely.
Won't talk about the other couple, but we'll go there. All right, so Mark is a practicing attorney. His beautiful wife, Dee Dee, which we brought up, 2 children, Clayton and Carly.
Right.
And I think some of the things that we're going to talk about today are super important, but what I promised you was that if you had anything you wanted to ask live, legal questions, that we would take them, and if I missed any, Mark will go back and he'll answer them, and I'll show him how to do that. But we want to be as interactive as possible because we think some of the things that we're going to discuss, I wouldn't say they're the most controversial I've had on the show, but they're certainly going to bring up some topics that are on everyone's minds. So talk a little bit about your practice and your history, my friend.
Yes, tomorrow will be 32 years I've been practicing. I was sworn in October 17th, 1985. I was a prosecutor here in Orlando for 4 years, and I've had my own practice for 28, primarily in the area of criminal defense, where I help people that have gotten into a bit of trouble.
So prosecution, how was that? Did you like that?
I did. It was a great training ground. We need prosecutors. The system needs all the players involved. We are a constitutional country. There is a presumption of innocence, and so all the parties do their part. But being a prosecutor was tremendous. I probably had over 4,000 or 5,000 cases. The last 18 months I worked in the child abuse and sex offense division, which was very tough. Very
well,
tough.
That'll drive you to go into your own criminal practice, right?
I have, as I said, 28 years. I've handled thousands of cases, primarily drug, DUI cases, but I did court-appointed work for a number of years, and I've handled every type of case, and I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has and talk about some of the issues we spoke about earlier.
Yeah, so let's dive into that, because I think some of those all of them are super important. We talked about opioids earlier, and I get this question a lot, so let's talk about that. One of the things that I recently read was that our governor had proposed that there would be a 3-day refill renewal requirement from doctors in order to get your opioids for whatever you're going through. That's across the board. And so talk a little bit about that, because I think there's so much information out there that opioids are bringing the country down and that everybody's abusing them. And in the criminal world, you have to deal with that. So tell us a little bit about your thoughts.
I think there's really two sides. We have the prescription medication, the oxycodone, the oxycontin, that are for people that are experiencing severe pain. And I think we have to separate that from what we're calling the opioid crisis, which is the heroin and the illegal use and possession of that drug and what it's causing chaos in families across the country. We're seeing a lot of overdoses. We're seeing a lot of deaths. Fentanyl has also been a huge issue now. That's a very deadly drug. Just a small amount can kill several adults. So we really have to separate the illegal use of the narcotic versus the legal use. And I think it's very important that we distinguish that, because that's the real crisis. We should not lump in legal users of prescription drugs to manage their pain in that same category.
Well, and you said you have a friend who was in an accident, motorcycle accident maybe?
Two of them.
Two of them. And so he relies on that because he's in true, real pain. And if we make the adjustments that some of the state and federal officials are trying to do, and our senators and congressmen, then it will be difficult for him. He'll have to actually have a waiting period before he gets the medicine.
He's actually been instructed by his doctor that he's going to be cut off a lot. And I think we need to keep government out of the doctor-patient relationship and let the doctors and the patients make these decisions. When government gets involved, of course, and starts with all these regulations and causing people with legitimate needs to not get access, that's where we're taking a wrong step.
Well, yeah, you don't want to have to suffer through the pain because there was a pill mill up the street, or there were issues with people stealing them or selling them on the street. And if you've got real pain, then yeah, you don't want to worry about having to wait the 3 days. And honestly, and I have a lot of pharmacist friends, so I'm just bringing this up to discuss, I have heard from a lot of my friends who are on the legit side of this saying that their pharmacist is now making a decision that's outside of the realm of the doctor-patient relationship.
Right. There's a certain thought that, all right, so many pills a day is all you should have or use. We're going to make that arbitrary decision. And again, it goes to a lot of misinformation. It's a knee-jerk reaction. It's a hot-button political issue. And oftentimes poor decisions are being made, and the people that need it the most are the ones that are denied access. The real problem is the illegal use of the drug and the distribution throughout this state and this country, which is causing horrific problems. No question that needs to be addressed. But we don't need to look at the legal side of it and restrict it in that manner, in my opinion.
Because won't that eventually, so for our friends that are truly legitimately needing the pills for their pain, doesn't that then go, okay, well, if I can't get it the regular way, then I'm going to go find a way to get it, which is just the complete opposite of what you want to do. But when you're in that much excruciating pain, you make some crazy choices that you normally wouldn't make.
Absolutely. I've represented many people that have taken prescription pads from their pediatricians and written fraudulent prescriptions, and they're looking at 15 years in prison for that. So it's a serious issue. Addiction is a serious issue. And many people taking the prescription drugs do become addicted to some extent. There's no question. And that needs to be monitored by the physician. But the overall, like purchasing a gun and making that into getting prescription medication that you need for pain, I think is wrong, and I think it needs to be rethought.
So talk about and what is your thought, one last thing, and I won't get too much because I want to survive this show. What's your thought on how big pharma plays into the picture?
I'm not an expert in that area. There's no question that there's huge money in these types of in these drugs and the continued prescribing of these drugs. I'm not sure of the connection. Obviously, there's a need. Are they being overprescribed? Possibly. Like I said, I'm not an expert in that realm. I look at it from a criminal side, where a person has been arrested for either the illegal possession of a certain narcotic, or someone like a mother who's addicted gets the prescription pad, takes it to the Walgreens. They call the doctor's office. They say, we didn't write that, and the cops show up and make the arrest. That's what I'm dealing with. But from a policies perspective, I don't know much about the pharmaceutical industry and as it ties to the opioids.
That was smart. You and I will both survive this show. Thank God you said that. All right, so let's talk about that. We talked a little bit about Gateway, right?
Right.
So you represent a lot of people who have, and you notice how quiet it got?
Yeah.
It's because everybody's listening here on this topic. You represent a lot of people who have had possession or distribution. Talk about that, because you educated me actually on the possession part. So talk to them a little bit about that, because you hear all this stuff in the news, and a lot of times there's a lot of information out there, which is why people push back on, let's say, marijuana. And we're not going to talk about alcohol being a gateway drug, are we?
No.
Oh, good.
Not at all.
That's blasphemy on this show.
Alcohol, we could spend a couple hours on alcohol, but marijuana use in this country we know is expanding. We have this dichotomy where we have it illegal in one state, legal in another. The problem I have is I believe that we should decriminalize an ounce or less of marijuana, and the reason for that is there is hardly a single family in Central Florida, and we're overlooking this beautiful town. Any family with teenagers is impacted by marijuana use, either through friends or through the school. And I don't know hardly any family that has not been impacted by marijuana use. And the subsequent arrest of their young son or daughter, and now they have been arrested. There's a mugshot. It's being pasted all over the internet. They now have a criminal record. It's 20 grams or less is a misdemeanor. Even 22, 25, 26 grams could be a felony. And that creates a horrible, horrible impact on a young child, very traumatic. It affects their ability to get a job. It affects their ability to get into school.
Yes.
And so it's a real, real crisis. And I'm seeing it, I'm just one attorney out of hundreds, but I see a lot of families that are suffering through this. And I think if there's certain things that you can do to help prevent that, educate your child, and I'd like to talk about some of those things.
Please, talk.
The first thing I think parents need to do is make sure they have an honest discussion. Marijuana use is going to happen even though we try to discourage it. But one of the biggest common mistakes that young people make is thinking that once they get in their car, they're immune from police activity. One of the greatest things that I see in most of the cases I represent are young people driving out at night. They'll light up a marijuana joint, they'll pull up to a traffic light, or they'll pull into a parking lot, or they'll get pulled over for a traffic infraction. And once the cops pull them over and smell marijuana, it's all over. So don't drive in a car with marijuana, don't use marijuana, and be very careful about going out into the community in your car, because the cops are looking out, especially for young people. They target them. You go past that stop bar 6 inches, that's a violation. They'll pull you over. If they smell marijuana, it's all over.
Are the kids? And I've got two comments. One question, one comment. Sorry. Are people in a vehicle where there has been marijuana being smoked, and they're not? Is there liability there on their point? Kind of like if they're in the car and they're not driving, but they have alcohol.
Well, if you get pulled over for a traffic violation, the law is if the officer says, "I smell cannabis," and of course sometimes they'll use that as almost a default mechanism. But once they smell marijuana in the car, there is no need for consent or for a warrant to search the car. They can order the occupants out. And if they find marijuana, most of the time, all the occupants are going to jail, typically.
Will they test them once they get to jail?
No. It's just the odor that allows the search. So even if no one has been smoking recently, if there's an odor in the car, the cops can use that for a search. That's why you have to be very careful as a young person what you carry in your car with you.
Yeah, and spraying Febreze in the car is not going to get rid of the smell. I'm just letting you all know, you younger people. All right, two things. Vic Colazzo got on and he says, "Been a long time since UCF government class of 80.
Right.
Looking good, great information." Love that. Hey,
yeah.
Vic. And then Bob Kovovich said, this is completely off topic, but we said we'd answer questions.
Sure.
Which I love. Why are red light cameras in Orange County operating and have been taken down in Seminole County? Do you deal with that a lot?
I've quit handling red light camera tickets, but I understand the frustration. There is a wide mix across the board in Florida with certain counties. It's still legal, other counties it's not. It's being debated. I don't have a rhyme or reason. It's just some judges have seen the light. The enforcement of a red light ticket is done with cameras, no police officer. As you know, if you run a red light, they'll ticket you. You can pay the ticket without it being a uniform traffic citation or points against your license. Some counties have seen that it's not fair. You don't have the right to cross-examine the equipment, the person who is monitoring the camera. So a lot of communities have used it as really to raise money as opposed to public safety. They say it's for public safety, but it's really not. So a lot of communities, a lot of counties have discontinued their use. Orange County still likes the money they generate.
Well, it's interesting. So I got a red light ticket. And what was funny is I actually got 3. Same one. Winter Park sent me one twice, and Orange County sent me one as well. And I don't know how that happened, but thankfully somebody took care of that ticket and made sure that didn't happen to me.
Very good.
But apparently that happens a lot. So let's say you get a red light ticket, you really need to maybe talk to a professional about that, because there could be all sorts of things wrong with that.
Right. A lot of what's really bad is the person who almost comes to a complete stop, then turns right on red. They're issuing tickets for that. The real goal was to keep people from running red lights, which create a great safety hazard.
Understood.
But the key is, once the ticket it's not really a ticket, it's much a citation. That citation, if you pay, I think it's $158, it doesn't go on your record. That's a way to sort of coerce the money out of you. If you don't pay that within a certain period of time, then the state of Florida issues a uniform traffic citation. Then you have to appear in court to challenge it or pay it or have your license suspended. That's when you need to contact a lawyer and have them challenge it.
Because a lot of people, too, you don't deal with traffic very often, do you?
I do it sort of as a favor to friends and family. Years ago when schools were fundraising, if you owned a company, you could donate an item. As an attorney, it was really crass. Here's $500 off for a DUI. So I started offering.
I love that. Are you kidding me?
Well,
that's so awesome.
But you don't want to encourage that.
No.
But if you get it, a lot of people get tickets. So I offered, look, if you get a ticket in Orange County, I'll handle it no charge, because it's rather simple to do. So I handle tickets sort of as a perk for friends and family.
I think you handled one of mine, didn't you?
I think I did.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you did. I don't get that many tickets, people. It just sounds like it while we're talking today.
Well, that's the key. There's a lot of traffic laws people aren't aware of or we ignore. Like I said, the stop bar is one of the greatest violators. There's a white stop bar at every stop sign. If you watch, people fly by that 10, 12 feet every time.
Right.
Not using your turn signal can get you stopped. Of course, speeding is one of the great, we all are guilty of that.
I have no idea what you're talking about. So tell me more about your criminal law practice, because I think people think criminal lawyers, here we go, we've all seen the shows, but you handle every case known to man. Do you go federal criminal, meaning, I know there's a better word for that. Again, the R&D for this show is $2.35. So tell us a little bit about the criminal cases that you handle.
Yeah, I don't do federal cases anymore. I used to, and I used to do quite a few. A lot of them involve Social Security fraud and other drug cases. But my practice is primarily the DUIs, the drug possessions, and the myriad of laws people find themselves in difficulty with, resisting arrest. One of the more unfortunate rises in crime that we've seen is domestic violence battery. Yeah. It used to be, as I was saying, 10 years ago, you'd see almost 99 out of every 100 battery cases male. Now it's more like 60-40. So you're seeing more females being arrested. And alcohol typically plays a role in that.
Is that because when the police get to the scene, that they determine it at that point? So there's not necessarily a presumption anymore that it's the guy.
Typically, the unwritten rule is that the police come out to a domestic case, somebody is going to jail. They're not going to leave the residence like they would in the past. But you're seeing more and more women being the aggressors, or at least alleged to be the aggressors, than ever before. And I'm not sure what to attribute that to. It's just I've just noticed it over the years.
Alleged is one of my favorite words. I use it on the show all the time. #allegedly. And people keep asking your questions.
Sure.
My sweet audience, ask any questions you have for Mark as we're going through, because we're just going to take over the conversation. I want to make sure I keep up with everybody's questions. And if for some reason you think of a question or you don't want to share it, Mark's information will be on there, and you can reach out to him directly, because I know sometimes asking the questions can be very personal, and we definitely want you to feel comfortable reaching out to Mark, but you don't have to do it on the show. So yeah, on the domestic side, so how do you feel about how we handle that here? When you're representing, let's say, do you represent men on the side of it?
I represent both men and women.
That's kind of, I think people don't know that, like, because I work with, I do the Walk a Mile in Her Shoes every year for Harbor House, which does, I believe they accept men in some way, shape, or form. They also accept pets. But are you seeing, so there's a rise in that? Is that because of what? Like, are the women finally snapping and the men are, this is what people will ask, I know.
I think we're seeing greater tension, greater stress, and it's issues that we see every day, that when you have children and you have financial issues, things can snap. And I think when you mix alcohol, typically most of the domestic violence cases I see typically involve too much to drink, an argument ensues, and that's not serious. There may be a grab, maybe a slap, and of course that's never appropriate. But marriage is a very unique relationship. It creates a lot of stress, and as a society we should, I think, look at that. But unfortunately, someone calls 911, which always, once you call 911, it's over.
It's over,
somebody's
baby.
going to jail, then someone's arrested. Typically, there's no bond until you see a judge at initial appearance, which is the next day. And it's very traumatizing for the family. And most of the time, there's no prior history of violence. It was one bad night they had, and we should try to understand that a little better. Now, the real domestic violence cases where men are punching women and hurting women, those I don't even handle those cases, but those are serious issues. But I think the majority of domestic violence cases we see are fairly minor. Because remember, that's a battery. Just touching someone, grabbing your girlfriend or wife's wrist.
Y'all saw that on camera.
It's a battery, but you have to file a complaint.
Yeah, I can't possibly.
But it's sad. I mean, it's sad. Again, with these other issues we talk about, drugs, alcohol. When people lose their jobs and there's the financial issues.
So when someone comes to you, I think one of the questions I always have, because I'm an expert because I watch Criminal Minds and Law and Order SVU, right? That's what everybody thinks. Just like we Google when we think we know what we're doing, and we can diagnose ourselves with whatever our maladies are. So what happens on the criminal side when you take a case and do you go in and go, I know you're guilty, not guilty? Because people like to know that. You're representing someone who's probably been charged, right?
Right.
And so how do you work through that as an attorney?
Most of the people I represent are good people that have had one bad night, have made one bad mistake, sometimes a little worse than others. I think there's a misnomer in thinking that defense attorneys are trying to get the client off. We're not trying to get the client off. A good attorney is going to work with the family, work with the client to minimize the damage. Make sure they're aware and accept responsibility for their actions, but we don't want to bury them under the jail for one bad night. If we can avoid it, get them help, make them see that they did wrong. But again, most of the cases are individual. They don't involve a victim. For instance, DUI, possession of drugs, being out at Universal and bumping into a police officer, and now all of a sudden you've got 3 felony charges. There's all sorts of ways that you can get into trouble without realizing it. And good people sometimes find themselves in trouble.
Now I'm going to ask you a question, and we didn't talk about this, and you can tell me you're not going to answer. All right?
Okay.
And that's an okay thing on this show. I ask questions, and sometimes they're not in the place to answer.
I know my rights.
You know, are they Miranda rights? I might know what a Miranda right is.
By the way, real quickly, a lot of people think that police have to read Miranda if they make an arrest. That's not true. That's only on TV. The only time Miranda warnings are required to be read to a suspect is during an interrogation, typically at the police station. Roadside DUI or at the house, they don't have to read you Miranda.
Mariska Hargitay has really disappointed me on this, then. I've been watching 21 years of Law and Order SVU.
Book him, Dan, on Murder One.
Yeah. All right, so my question, which a lot of people ask, is if you get pulled over for a DUI, there's so much information out there, and if you don't feel comfortable answering, that's fine. But I get asked this all the time. What do you do? Blow, not blow. Give the blood test, don't. demand this, demand that, and you're not thinking super clearly, I'm sure, when you're pulled over.
Right. There's added stress.
There's added stress. So what do you do? What's your recommendation?
They've changed the law recently. I would have always told you don't provide a breath sample, but they recently changed the law on first-time DUIs, where you can avoid any hard suspension of your license and keep your driving privilege. If you've had a lot to drink, you shouldn't be driving, of course. You should grab a Uber, but in case you find yourself in that position, then it's okay to take the test, but you don't have to. But if you have had very little to drink, I would say take the test. And I don't want to get too deep into this.
Understood.
A 0 weight or lower, your license will not be temporarily suspended. If you refuse or blow above a 0 weight, then your license will be suspended for 6 months or 1 year. So taking the test, if you've had just a glass or two of wine, is probably preferable because you'll blow below a 0 weight, there's no temporary suspension of your license, and things are good. So that's my advice. Cooperate.
Always cooperate.
Always cooperate.
That I believe. What about asking for the blood test?
Well,
is that just a crazy little TV show thing, or
that's a misnomer? You can ask for a blood test, an independent blood test, but only after you provided a valid breath sample.
Understood.
So you can't refuse the breath test, demand a blood sample. That won't be allowed.
Yeah, that's not good. So you have to
provide a valid sample.
You should blow, pretty much, and that's because honestly, automatically they get the. Is that still the law? If you choose not to blow, you lose your license for the 6 months.
Right, but you can waive the hearing challenging the suspension to keep your license. So I would now, you don't have to take the field sobriety exercises. A lot of people think they have to take them. They don't. You can't be forced to. It can be used only in a trial against you. In other words, the refusal to take the breath test or the field sobriety exercises is only if it goes to trial. Then they can introduce the fact that you refused. But when you refuse, they have less evidence. And if you don't blow and you've had too much drink, then they don't have that scientific measurement of your...
Something to ask Mark about. All right, believe it or not, we're at 1:27. Wow. Goes fast. So tell the wonderful audience, you guys have been great today, by the way. They've got a lot of questions, which you'll look at later.
Right.
Tell them, you want to leave them with any parting words, certainly give them your URL and how to reach out to you, which we'll post on Facebook and all social media as well. But
I think the biggest thing to remember, because it's been in the news for the last few years, is most police officers are professional and courteous, not all. But if you are pulled over, don't argue with the police, follow their instructions. If you're asked to get out of the car, get out of the car. Sometimes police can overstep their boundaries, there's no question, but don't make it worse. You can always file a complaint or use the police action and maybe a motion to suppress based on a bad stop, but always cooperate, never give them a hard time. My website is markcbender.com. My office is downtown. I'm happy to take any questions you have. My phone number is 407-246-0100. 246-0100.
And we'll put that on all the posts. So it was awesome today. See how fast it goes?
I enjoyed it.
It really goes so fast. And I appreciate you being open about some of that stuff, because I know a lot of people have these questions, and a lot of stuff gets put in the news, or they get all their information from TV, like me.
Right.
And it's so important for people to have the real information.
99% of the cases are below the radar. They're not the George Zimmerman, they're not the Casey Anthony cases. And you'd be surprised when you go. I think everybody should go to the courthouse and sit and watch the daily grind of court for a day or two to see what life is really like in the American court system. It'd be an eye-opener for a lot of people.
I would imagine it would. You can't bring any alcohol in there, though.
No,
sorry,
you can't.
folks.
Sorry.
All right, love you guys. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you, Dee Dee, for setting this up. Thank you guys for listening. Love you too, Dee Dee. And we appreciate you guys. And ask questions. Go ahead and follow up. Mark's information will be on there when we share the video. Reach out to him. You can message him on Facebook. He'll give you his email address. He'll give you the phone number. Definitely reach out to him, because he's got your best interest at heart. I've known that for how old are our kids? Let's say 25-ish years.
Right.
And you were awesome, so thank you.
Well, you do a great show.
Thank you. And you guys have a great one. We will see you tomorrow, Tuesday. I have Kay Rollins. on, which I'm excited about. I'm excited every day to meet with these amazing people I get to meet with, like Mark and Kay and everybody else down the line. Look at the list. So have a great one, and now Mark's going to do our tradition, which is to get up and hit that teeny little finish button in the bottom right-hand corner.
Will do.
We love you guys. See you tomorrow. Have a great Monday.